Thank you very much for those introductions. It's actually 5 years and 3 days since I became leader of the Conservative Party. Not that I'm counting or anything like that. But you're absolutely right. That was an early decision that we made, and it was about trying to be, as well, a responsible opposition, meeting the real challenges that we face rather than playing a political game. Thank you, Julian, for your introduction. The 3 questions you asked about equity, about quality, and about access are the 3 questions I will try and answer today.
Killing.
My turn.
Because we've seen the protests, we've seen the marches, we've seen how passionate many of our students are about this issue. Well, let me tell you this, I am just as passionate that young people should have the chance to go to university, whatever their background or family income. Just as passionate that they should be able to leave university without an unfair burden of debt. And just as passionate that our universities, as David Willetts has said, should be amongst the best in the world. The debate going on today is about the best way of achieving these things. But if I'm honest, and as Julian has already said, the passion in this debate is drowning out some of the truth. So today I want to try and explain the real truth about what's going on, about why we need change, and why the change that we are proposing is the best option that we've got. Let's start with why we need change. Put simply, we cannot stick with the status quo. The university system we've got today is unsustainable, uncompetitive, and unfair. It's unsustainable because in the last 50 years we've seen a massive increase in the number of young people going to university, and yet the current model of higher education funding is simply not providing enough money to support this growing number of students. In fact, the Brown Review shows that public funding per student is now lower in real terms than it was 20 years ago. We have to address this. We simply cannot allow our universities to continue to fall behind their international rivals. Just look at what's happening in India and China. In the last 3 years, India has built 8 new institutes of technology, 12 universities, and 7 new institutes of management. And in the next 15 years, the number of graduates from Chinese universities is set to grow 5-fold. This is, if you like, the competition that we face. So what do? Do we radically reduce the number of student places here in the UK and deny many of our young people the chance to go to university? No. We want more people to have the chance to go to university, not less. So we have to find a new way of funding higher education in this country. The question is how? Now, of course, it'd be nice if you could just do it by increasing government spending, but we can't. Even at a time of economic growth, government spending alone would never be a sustainable way of funding the growth in student numbers. And right now, it's just not sustainable in the long term, but frankly, it's unaffordable in the short term as well. I'm not going to patronise you by pretending there are sort of pots of money we can delve into. There aren't. We are in deep debt. And if you want to know how serious that can be, just look at what's been happening to some of our European neighbours, not least, of course, Ireland. At a time when markets are gripped by fears about government finances across Europe, it is absolutely vital that we keep Britain out of the danger zone by sticking to our plans for getting the public finances under control. So if we can't increase spending, what about hiking up taxes? That would mean asking people on low incomes, many of whom are struggling at this time, to subsidise higher education more than they do already. I say that's just not acceptable. We shouldn't ask those on low incomes to pay taxes to prop up an unaffordable university funding system that they themselves do not benefit from directly. In fact, over the course of a lifetime, a graduate earns on average over £100,000 more than someone who doesn't go to university. Isn't it right that those graduates' contributions to the system should reflect the advantages that they've enjoyed? We have no choice. We need change. We need to put the funding of our universities on a sustainable footing, and it's right that when it comes to doing this, successful graduates should pay their share. But there's another reason why we need change in our university system. As well as being unsustainable, it's becoming uncompetitive. Yes, we do have some of the world's best universities, but I believe we can be even better. Today, the status quo, in a way, is preventing that. At the moment, most universities get most of their money from the government, and almost all of them charge the maximum fee. That simply doesn't introduce genuine competition or choice. There's not the real incentive for universities to improve and give students what they want, and that is damaging the quality of higher education. So again, we need change. But there's another, and I think even bigger reason why we can't stick with how things are. Universities should be part of an education system that is in total an engine for social mobility. Universities should be one of the key vehicles through which people from the poorest backgrounds are able to lift themselves up. But today, that engine, that vehicle, has stalled. The system is unfair. Just listen to this. Oxford and Cambridge take more students each year from just 2 schools, Eton and Westminster, than from among the 80,000 pupils who are eligible for free school meals. In the past few years, the number of children from poorer families who make it to the top universities has actually gone down. Social mobility is in danger of going backwards. As we saw just yesterday, 21 Oxbridge colleges took no black students last year. Now, if we're serious about social mobility, these things have got to change. Now, we don't change them, in fact, by just focusing on universities. Indeed, evidence shows that it's investment in early years that is the biggest driver of social mobility. By the time children get to university age, frankly, it is usually too late. So we have made, in this coalition government, we have made our choice. A choice in favour of social mobility, a choice in favour of a fairer society, a choice in favour of a country where you can genuinely escape the circumstances of your birth. That's why we are protecting school spending and enhancing it for the least well off. So spending per pupil maintained even in a difficult economic environment. Free nursery education introduced for disadvantaged 2-year-olds. And a pupil premium worth hundreds of pounds for each disadvantaged pupil all the way from preschool right through to university. Those are the choices that we are making. The alternative is just sticking where you are, maintaining the status quo. A status quo in which a person who is well off is 7 times more likely to go to university than someone from a poor background. This is the appalling situation we're in. And it's why everyone who cares about fairness shouldn't be fighting change, they should be fighting for change. So I think it's clear that long-term, responsible reform of higher education means making it more sustainable by asking successful graduates who go on to earn a good salary to make a bigger contribution. Making it more competitive and more responsive with students calling the shots and universities bending over backwards for them. But most importantly, making it fairer, opening the doors of universities to everyone wherever they're from. So how do we achieve this? Now, some people suggest that a graduate tax, pure and simple, fits the bill. Under this system, once students have graduated and got a job, they would pay a supplement to their income tax, potentially 3 or 4 pence for every pound that they earn. Now, we have taken a long, hard look at this option, but I have to tell you, it is not the way forward. First off, it is simply not affordable, particularly in the short to medium term. There is a crisis in the public finances right now, but Lord Brown's review shows that a pure graduate tax will actually take till 2041 to produce enough money to fully fund higher education in our country. In the meantime, it will be government that makes up the shortfall, adding billions to public spending and borrowing. Second, a graduate tax is not responsive to students. All funding would be centralised. The money would come into the Treasury, and it would be ministers and civil servants who'd have to decide where it goes. Under this system, the relationship between the student and the university would actually be even weaker than it is today. This gives the student no real say over how things should be done. That is bad for students, and it's bad for driving up standards. But there is another way in which the graduate tax is uncompetitive and, frankly, unworkable. If you don't live in this country, the tax can't be collected. That would encourage our graduates to find work overseas, a brain drain from our shores. Just imagine that. Creating a system where we put the money in, as a country, time and effort to educate our best and our brightest, and then it is other countries and other economies that would benefit. That is completely crazy. It's not surprising that Universities UK, although they have been looking, cannot find a single country that has introduced a graduate tax. Third, it's also not actually as fair as you might think, or as fair as things could be. It's true that, of course, those who go on to get the highest paid jobs will end up paying back more. But under a graduate tax, the very lowest earners, those on just over £6,000 a year, will have to start paying back too. Now, I don't think that's fair. It's a lower threshold than the one that actually exists for paying back student contributions, let alone the higher threshold, the £21,000, that we will introduce. What's more, because taxes can't be collected from people living in other countries, we could get a situation where foreign students end up paying less than many UK graduates. That is biased against people living here, and again, not fair. And here's another reason why it's not fair. An open-ended graduate tax would mean you literally keep on paying the government until you stop working. And this means some people would find themselves paying many, many times more than the cost of their course. Just think about what that means. It means the ambitious people who put themselves through university, who work hard and do well off the back of their own efforts, will be penalised for the rest of their life. Is that fair? No. Again, these are the people who should, of course, pay the most tax in the UK. But under this system, they could leave the UK and pay no tax at all. In fact, this system would send out the very worst kind of message at a time when we desperately need to drive enterprise and growth in our economy. Anti-aspiration, anti-success, anti-people who want to get on and make the best of their lives. So it is absolutely clear to me that a graduate tax is not the way forward. The last government looked at it and found that. We looked at it and found that. It's not so clear what the opposition think. The leader of the opposition apparently thinks a graduate tax is right. The Shadow Chancellor, until this morning, thinks that it was wrong. And the Shadow Business Secretary, well, is sort of for it but not sure about how it could work. Now, I would say this. By all means, you have every right to oppose what a government is doing. But you've got to be clear about what you would do instead. At the moment, they are facing in every direction, and that is just not responsible politics at all. It is the worst sort of opportunism available. And as someone in a political party that spent 13 years in the wilderness, let me tell them, the public are not fools. Opportunism is always spotted and not rewarded. It gets you nowhere. Now, while it's clear to me that a graduate tax is wrong, it's not surprising that some instinctive supporters of a graduate tax support our plan. Because people want a graduate tax because the poor should pay less, the rich should pay more, and the system should encourage people to aspire to go to university. And our plan does all of these things. Let me try and explain, as clearly as I can, what we are proposing. We're taking forward the main recommendations made in the Brown Review. Let's remember, a review that was set up by the last government and had cross-party support from Conservative and Labour that looked at all the evidence. In that review, Lord Brown advocated a graduate contribution scheme. So we will lift the current cap of £3,290 on tuition fees to a basic threshold of £6,000. In exceptional circumstances, some universities will be allowed to charge £9,000, but that is the absolute maximum. These are the headline figures, and I know they are the figures that people are concerned about. But, and this is a major but, neither students nor their parents will pay a single penny up front. This is really important because I know that people are confused about this. Not a single penny will leave their bank account until after they've left university and got a job where they earn more than £21,000 a year. Then, and only then, will they start repaying at a rate of 9% of their income above £21,000. And here are some other important things that people need to know. If at any time they're unemployed, take time out to bring up children, or take a lower paid job so their income falls below £21,000, they will stop repaying. And after 30 years, all debts will be written off. So with our new system, the poorest quarter of graduates will pay back less overall than they do currently. And everyone will pay less per month than they do now. Let me say that again slowly. Because graduates will no longer make repayments on earnings between £15,000 and £21,000, and because the payback period is longer, all graduates will pay less per month than they do now. That is how our proposals work, and this is why I believe they're right. One, they are sustainable for our country. This is the most sustainable funding option available, allowing universities to get the funding they need, and offering much needed savings for the taxpayer. Today, 60% of university funding comes from the public sector, 40% from the private sector. With our plans, it will be possible to reverse this. So 60% comes from private sources and only 40% from the public. And those who say we're removing state subsidy or making students bear the full costs of higher education, they are wrong. In total, the amount we are paying through loans, grants and scholarships in meeting both tuition costs and living costs will rise over the spending review period from £7 billion to nearly £12 billion. Two, our proposals will also make our university system much more competitive. Instead of government deciding where the money goes, it will be students that decide. The spending power will be directly in their hands. That gives students the greatest possible influence over the service they receive and puts real pressure on universities to drive up standards. Three, and most importantly, our proposals are the fairest option on the table. Fairer than the current system and fairer than the graduate tax too. Take, for example, a graduate care worker earning £23,000. Under the current system, they would begin making repayments of £44 a month. Under a graduate tax of 3%, they would pay £38 a month, but just on the tuition fees, not including anything on living loans. Under a graduate, with our proposals, they would pay only £15 a month. Now, some people will say, well, these figures don't matter, especially because people, especially the poorest, will still be put off by the fees. I think, frankly, that does a massive disservice to our students. They can tell the difference between upfront fees they pay now or contributions that they make when they're earning money later on. Indeed, the evidence backs that up. Lord Brown has shown that since the original introduction of tuition fees, applications from poorer backgrounds have not actually fallen. The injustice in the current system is not the fees, it's frankly the failure elsewhere, particularly earlier on in the system. Additionally, students from the poorest backgrounds aren't given sufficient reason to believe that they can get to the best universities. Research by the Sutton Trust found that bright pupils from private schools made more than twice as many applications to the best universities as those from comprehensives. Changing this is not something we can leave to chance. We thought from every angle about how we can help raise people's aspirations. So we are abolishing the need for part-time students to pay upfront for tuition, as long as they're studying for at least a quarter of their time. For the first time, they're going to be treated like everyone else. This is a massive boost for fairness, because part-time students tend to be older and less well off. We're also setting up a £150 million National Scholarship Fund, open to anyone from a poor background who is bright, ambitious and wants to go to university. This fund could mean any student eligible for free school meals who's accepted for a place at university would have 1 year's fees paid for by the government. And at the same time as increasing the amount universities can charge students, we are asking more of those institutions as well. We're saying that if they want to charge more than £6,000, they have to show us real progress in widening access, not just through summer schools, outreach programmes, or offering more flexible part-time courses, important as they are, but also with their own admissions, and we hope by funding a second free year for any student eligible for free school meals. If they don't show this kind of progress, they simply won't be allowed to charge over £6,000. So this is the real truth about our plans. They will put universities on a sound financial footing and make future expansion possible. They will create a dynamic university sector that can compete with the very best in the world, and because the rich will pay more and the poor will pay less, they will put fairness back at the heart of our university system. Sustainable, competitive and fair. The universities that you want, the universities that I want, and the chance for everyone to go to them, whatever their background or income. Thank you for listening.